Hello, welcome to Silver Thread Sewing. I'm Diane. This is Friday Sews. So if this is your first time here, thank you for stopping by my channel. And if you're returning, God bless you. So I am today going to share with you a couple things that we did in our sewing workshop a few weeks ago that was held at our church. Callie and I taught it or led the little workshop, and I had a couple people ask me if I would kind of show some of the things that we went over. It was definitely a beginner class, so we had a couple people that said they didn't even know how to sew a button on, and a couple that knew how to do basic sewing, that we taught how to do kind of a blind hem by hand, and how a couple things about sewing a button on, and none of them had ever seen the way that I like to sew a button on. Now, I feel sure that most of you have, and most of you probably even do it, and do it much better than I do. But since I had some questions about that, I had two things about that particular thing that I wanted to share with you, just in case somebody hasn't seen it, because I've been doing it for ages, and I don't even know where I learned it. I think it was in one of my old Singer sewing books that I've had since I can remember. So anyway, and then in the life portion, I wanted to update on Salem, our little beagle, because so many of you were so gracious and so kind to be concerned about her, and I definitely wanted to update you and about what's coming up next week as well. So first thing I'm going to do, I want to tell you what I do to my hand sewing thread, and it's the thread I use on the machine too, but I don't do it for the machine, just for hand sewing. I don't know if you've ever had it happen, but when I am hand sewing like a button or a hem or mending something, the thread is terrible to get twisted and knotted up, especially if it's a fine sewing thread, maybe like the Coats and Clark or one of the finer size threads. I don't find it as bad with Gooderman, but it still does it in hand sewing, at least with me. I guess I must twist my needle or something, I don't know, but my thread is a mess. So you can buy thread conditioner, and I've got this little, it didn't come in this, pins came in this, but this is the kind that you would put on your sewing machine. It would, if I don't drop them all over the place. So this would be attached to your sewing machine. It's got a little sticky dot here, and you would put it like right before the thread comes into your needle. And it's just a kind of a little substance, a waxy-like substance, and it will condition your thread, and it's supposed to help your machine to handle the thread better. Now, this is fine for hand sewing too. You can run your thread through this, and it works fine, but I like to use something else better than this. To me, this is a little sticky, and it kind of leaves a little bit of a feeling on your thread of kind of being hard, kind of once it dries. But let me show you what I like to use. So the thing I would rather use is beeswax, just plain beeswax. And you can buy this. I ordered this from waywack.com. This one I have had for ages, and it's getting really, really dried out. Now, somebody had told me that you can re-melt this, but I've got some friends at church that have bees. They have honeybees, and I had mentioned to them the other day that I would like to have some homemade beeswax just to see, compare it to the store-bought kind. So it's like I always tell you guys, I am not set up for doing tutorials. I can barely see what I'm doing myself, but I've got a gray color thread here, and I'm going to put it on this lighter color fabric, and hopefully with the light you'll be able to see this thread. So it's really thin, a narrow gauge of thread, and it's really bad to twist and get tangled up when I use it. So after you've coated your thread with the beeswax, it just gives it a more substantial feel. It's not as easy to twist up and to knot up. Now, for the way that I sew my button on with this, you need to have a pretty long piece of thread to begin with, because we're going to double this. So you just kind of even it all up. And that's going to make you have, that will make you have 4 strands of thread instead of just 2 strands. And then I make a little loop. Just make a little loop with it. And I have this lighted needle threader that my son James got for me back when I started having trouble with my eye. And it helps a whole lot because and it also helps if you have a little bit larger eye of a needle. So you just pull the threader through. Now you have 8 strands of thread in your needle. And all you're going to do is a regular knot at the end. And what I like to do is just kind of trim off the loops that I have, and that way it won't be as bulky. But you have, that would be like going through your thread, what, 4 times, 8 times? And that's with one pass through your thread. You're going to have 8 strands of thread in your button. Now, suppose I wanted to sew my button on this little piece of fabric. Suppose this were a bud placket or something. Instead of going through the bottom and leaving the knot where it's going to show on the inside of your garment, I like to start through on the right side of the fabric and go down. And then I have my knot right underneath where the button's going to go. So I come back up, and you would have it marked, of course, where you want your button. And I have a shank button for this demonstration. And then I would just pull my thread through, and I'm going to go back down right by my knot. And when you tighten that, you've got 8 strands of thread around that button, and you've only went through 1 time. Now I'm going to come back up. You could do it more than once. You could do it 2 or 3 times, and still, you know, be doing just fine. But I'm going to do it once for the sake of time. Now, when you have passed your thread through it as many times as you want to, I like to take all these strands of thread, and I go around my button 3 times. And I do that whether it's a shank button or whether it's a regular 2 or 4 hole button. And then I just go right in at the bottom of that and make another knot. And see, this thread, because of that beeswax, the thread is doing much better at behaving itself. And so I'm going to go through it 2 times. And I hope you're getting some of this at least. And then I pull it tightly. And cut my thread. And now the back of the fabric has no knots. And you can't see any knots on the top. It's all underneath the button. And it's very secure. And a lot less work than if I had had to do it the normal way of just having the thread looped 1 time. But I hope that helps somebody at least. So I hope that was clear enough to kind of give you a little bit of an idea. But the beeswax, to me, makes all the difference. It just makes your thread feel sturdier and less twisty and less easily knotted. But that's my experience with it. Now, I do want to get some locally, and I'm hoping that my friends from church will bring me a little bit. I told him I didn't need but just a tiny bit. But this is getting pretty dried out, but it still works. It still does just fine. And I did order this from Beeswax, and I'll try to put a link. If I can, I'll put a link to this very product, and if not, I'll put a link to their store. They have tremendously good prices even now. And they also have a fantastic selection of sewing ideas and notions. Now that was the main thing that everybody at the sewing workshop seemed to enjoy. They really enjoyed finding out how to do that button and how to put more loops of thread through your needle and do less passes through. But I hope that helps somebody a little bit at least. Now, I'm going to real quickly update you on life, and that will be about Salem and taking her to the vet the other day. So I'll link to the video I did earlier in the week if you're interested in that, where I talked more about her problem. When we got her to the vet the next day after I talked to you guys, he had the look on his face, and I almost started crying just, from the look on his face, because he felt of these large lumps in her throat, and I could tell he thought it was really bad. So, long story short, they did blood work. They had to stick her little arm twice, and finally got it out of her back leg, and it was just hard for her. She doesn't like to be messed with, of course, but he did her blood work, and he was shocked, and I was so thankful, and I couldn't wait to tell y'all. Her blood work was all normal. Her white count, he said if it was elevated by a small amount, that would pretty much tell him she had an infection. But if it were elevated by a large amount, a really high count of white cells, it would mean probably lymphoma, cancer. So after her blood work came back good, and all her heart, kidneys, and all that, her functions were all normal, he took a needle and a syringe, and he drew out 2 syringes of fluid out of that lump. So that made him think that it's probably, most likely, a clogged salivary gland in her little mouth. She was supposed to have had her teeth cleaned again right like the week after the hurricane hit back in September. She should have had her teeth cleaned in October. Well, his office was heavily damaged, and we couldn't get back in with him until, I think he came back right after the 1st of this year, so we got her in February, and he scheduled her for her cleaning in the next week. And then he had to have a surgical procedure, and he's not been able to go back to full duty. He can only do light duty. He's not been able to do any procedures. So we've still not been able to get her little teeth cleaned, and they do need it really bad, and her gums are red. And we give her the little tooth cleaning bones and all that, but obviously it's not helping enough. So anyway, he put her on an antibiotic and a fluid pill, just like Lasix, like we would take, just a little white water pill. So he's hoping that with the antibiotic and the water pill that they may unclog and drain on their own, that being they being the salivary glands. Now, if they don't drain on their own and they start filling up more, they have to do surgery, and he can't do that here, so we would have to go off the mountain to a larger veterinary clinic to have that done. And she is almost 10, but she is healthy. Her blood work was all good. Her heart's good and all that. So if we can afford it, if it's something we can afford, and if they don't drain on their own, we probably will have to try to have those glands surgically removed, and that would make it all better for that, and hopefully have her teeth cleaned at the same time, and she would only have to be put to sleep the one time. So I know that was a long explanation, but y'all were so kind, and I've had messages come in and asking about her, and she's so special to us. We just, we're just so attached to her, and we love her, and she's such a good little dog. She truly is. She's so funny. Ever since we've had her, she'll go up. Our yard is all steep, and she'll go up in the upper yard. And if I can find it, I've got a video of her doing it just a little bit. But she'll start at the top of the yard, and she lays down with her head pointing downhill, and she starts kind of wiggling her body, and she'll start sliding, and she'll slide all the way down to the bottom of the yard. She's just a goofball. She's so funny. And she's just so special to us. And so hopefully it will be something we can afford to have done. And if the need be, I'm praying that it won't be necessary, and that God will just allow this antibiotic to help, and the fluid pills, and that they'll drain on their own, and we can get our teeth cleaned then, and hopefully she'll be okay for a while. So I know that's been more talk about life than sewing, but this little button trick and my little thread hack, I hope that will help somebody. Next week, I'm going to have my blouse finished, my new look 6743 that I showed you in the video the other day. And I'm also going to start the fabric wheel of fate next week. I don't know if I'm going to put 4 or 6 fabrics, probably just 4, because 6, as slow as I am getting anything done, 6 would take me till next January. So I'll probably just put 4 fabrics on my fabric wheel of fate. But anyway, have a great weekend, and I hope that if you're here in the U.S., I hope you've had a good 4th of July. I hope you'll get to barbecue and have just a great time. And all over the place, wherever you are, I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you hopefully next week with my fabric wheel of fate. Thanks again for everything, and remember, if you love to sew, don't ever give it up. You'll never have time or money to get into any trouble as long as you sew. And you can ask me how I know. Thanks, guys.